Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Our first story is titled, "Discovered My Husband Has a Secret Child with Another Woman." I was happily married to my husband, Caleb, for 8 years. We had a comfortable life in the suburbs, good jobs, and were thinking about starting a family of our own. Little did I know that Caleb already had a family I knew nothing about. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my world came crashing down. I was at work, buried in spreadsheets and client emails, when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is this Avery, Caleb's wife?" the message read. Curious and a bit confused, I replied, "Yes, this is Avery. Who is this?" "We need to talk. It's about Caleb. Can we meet?" My heart started racing. A million possibilities ran through my mind, none of them good. Was Caleb hurt? In trouble? I took a deep breath and typed back, "What's this about? Is Caleb okay?" "He's fine," came the reply. "But there's something you need to know. Please, can we meet in person?" I agreed to meet the mysterious texter at a coffee shop near my office after work. The rest of the day dragged by in a haze of anxiety and speculation. By the time 5 o'clock rolled around, I was a bundle of nerves. I arrived at the coffee shop early, ordered a latte I knew I wouldn't drink, and found a table in the corner. A few minutes later, a woman walked in. She was around my age with long dark hair and tired eyes. She scanned the room, and when her gaze landed on me, I knew this was the person I was meeting. "Avery?" she asked as she approached my table. I nodded, gestured her to sit. "And you are—" "I'm Melissa," she said, sliding into the chair across from me. She looked nervous, fidgeting with the strap of her purse. I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to come out with it. I have a 5-year-old son. His name is Austin, and Caleb is his father." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. I gripped the edge of the table, feeling like I might fall out of my chair. "What?" I managed to croak out. Melissa reached into her purse and pulled out a photo, sliding it across the table to me. I looked down at the smiling face of a little boy with Caleb's eyes and dimples. The resemblance was undeniable. "I'm so sorry," Melissa said, her voice thick with emotion. "I never wanted to interfere in your life. Caleb and it was a brief thing before you two got married. When I found out I was pregnant, he begged me not to tell anyone. He said he was getting married, that it would ruin everything." I stared at the photo, unable to look away from those familiar eyes. "He's known all this time?" Melissa nodded. "He's been sending money for Austin's care, but lately the payments have been sporadic. When I confronted him about it, he told me to leave him alone, that he had his own family to worry about now." My mind was reeling. My Caleb had a child, had been lying to me for our entire marriage, had abandoned his own son. The Caleb I thought I knew would never do something like this, but then again, the Caleb I thought I knew wouldn't have cheated either. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked, finally looking up from the photo. Melissa's eyes welled with tears. "Austin's been asking about his dad. He sees other kids with their fathers, and I can't help lying to him. I thought if I talked to you, maybe you could help convince Caleb to be a part of Austin's life." I let out a bitter laugh. "I don't even know who Caleb is anymore." We talked for another hour. Melissa told me about her brief relationship with Caleb, how he'd promised her the world and then vanished when things got complicated. She showed me more photos of Austin, told me about his likes and dislikes, his personality. With each new piece of information, I felt my heart breaking all over again. As I drove home that evening, my mind was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The life I thought I had, the husband I thought I knew, it was all a lie. I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. Car was already there. I took a deep breath, grabbed my purse, and walked into the house. Caleb was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove. He looked up as I entered. a smile on his face. "Hey, honey, I'm making your favorite pasta sauce. Thought we could have a nice dinner tonight." I stared at him, this man I'd loved for so long, trying to reconcile him with the person I'd learned about today. "We need to talk," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Smile faltered. "Is everything okay?" I pulled out my phone, found the picture of Austin that Melissa had sent me, and held it up for Caleb to see. "Who is this?" The color drained from Caleb's face. He stumbled back, bumping into the counter. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. "I met Melissa today," I said, watching his reaction carefully. "She told me everything, Caleb, about your relationship, about Austin. How could you keep this from me?" Caleb ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I once found endearing, but now saw as a sign of his distress. "Avery, I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut him off. "Explain how you've been lying to me for our entire marriage, how you abandoned your child." "I didn't abandon him," Caleb protested weakly. "I've been sending money." "Money?" I scoffed. "That's not being a father, Caleb. That little boy has been growing up without you. And what about me? Did our vows mean nothing to you?" Caleb moved towards me, his hands outstretched. "Avery, please, I love you. What happened with Melissa? It was a mistake. I was young and stupid. When she told me she was pregnant, I panicked. I had just proposed to you. We were planning our future. I didn't want to lose you." I stepped back, avoiding his touch. "So instead you chose to lie to me, to Melissa, to your son? God, Caleb, do you have any idea what this feels like? To realize that the person you love most in the world has been living a double life?" Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't bother to wipe them away. Caleb looked stricken, his own eyes glistening. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I never meant for this to happen. I thought I was protecting everyone." I shook my head. "You were protecting yourself. You've been playing happy families with me while your son grows up without a father. How could you do that, Caleb? How could you look me in the eye every day and talk about having children when you already had a child you were ignoring?" Caleb sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. "I don't know," he mumbled. I couldn't face it. Every time I thought about telling you, I imagined losing you, and then more time would pass, and it got harder and harder to come clean." I stood there, looking at the man I thought I knew, feeling like I was seeing him for the first time. The anger was still there, bubbling beneath the surface, but now it was mixed with pity. Caleb looked small, defeated. "What do we do now?" I asked, more to myself than to him. Caleb looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "I'll do anything, Avery, anything to make this right. I'll tell Melissa. I want to be part of Austin's life. I'll go to counseling. Whatever you want." I sighed, suddenly feeling exhausted. "I don't know what I want, Caleb. I don't even know who you are anymore. I need some time to think." I turned and walked out of the kitchen, ignoring Caleb's for me to stay and talk. I grabbed an overnight bag from our closet, threw in some clothes and toiletries, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Caleb asked, following me. "To my sister's," I replied, not looking at him. "I can't be here right now. I can't look at you without seeing all the lies." As I drove to my sister Emma's house, I called her to give her a heads up. I didn't go into details, just said that Caleb and I had a big fight and I needed a place to stay for a few days. Emma, bless her, didn't push for more information. She just told me her spare room was ready whenever I needed it. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work, something I never do, and spent most of my time curled up in Emma's guest room, alternating between crying and staring numbly at the wall. Emma brought me food and tea, sat with me when I wanted company, and gave me space when I needed to be alone. On the third day, I finally felt ready to talk. Emma and I sat at our kitchen table, mugs of coffee between us, as I poured out the whole story. To her credit, Emma listened without interrupting, her face a mix of shock and sympathy. Her words were comforting, and with her support, I found my resolve to finally do something about the situation. The next morning, I sent Caleb a text asking to meet at a neutral location, a park near our house. He responded immediately, agreeing to meet that afternoon. As I waited on a bench by the duck pond, I tried to organize my thoughts. What did I want to know? What did I need to hear from Caleb to even consider moving forward? I saw Caleb before he saw me. He looked terrible, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. When he spotted me, relief washed over his face. "Avery," he said as he approached, "thank you for meeting me. I've been so worried." I gestured for him to sit, keeping some distance between us on the bench. "I needed time to think," I said. Caleb nodded. "I understand. I don't even know where to start. I'm so sorry, Avery. I know those words aren't enough, but I am. I never meant to hurt you like this." I took a deep breath. "I need you to be completely honest with me, Caleb. No more lies, no more half-truths. I want to know everything. When did you meet Melissa? How long were you together? Why didn't you tell me about Austin when you found out?" Caleb looked out over the pond, his shoulders slumped. "I met Melissa about 6 months before I met you. We dated for a couple of months. It wasn't serious, at least not for me. When we broke up, I thought that was the end of it. Then, about 2 months after you and I started dating, she called me to tell me she was pregnant." He paused, running a hand over his face. "I panicked. I had just started falling for you, and I was terrified of losing you. I told Melissa I'd support the baby financially, but that I couldn't be involved. I convinced myself that it was better this way, that the child would be better off without a father who didn't want to be there." I felt a fresh wave of anger wash over me. "How could you make that decision? That wasn't just your life you were deciding, Caleb. It was your child's and mine. You took away my chance to make an informed decision about our relationship." Caleb turned to me, his eyes pleading. "I know, God, Avery, I know how wrong I was. At first, I told myself it was a kindness, that I was sparing you the pain of knowing. But as time went on, it got harder and harder to come clean. I was a coward. I chose the easy path instead of the right one." I shook my head, fighting back tears. "Did you ever plan to tell me? What about when we started talking about having kids of our own?" Caleb looked down at his hands. "I don't know. I think part of me hoped that if we had our own children, it would somehow make up for what I've done, that I could be the father I should have been to Austin." "That's not how it works, Caleb," I said, my voice breaking. You can't replace one child with another. Austin deserved better. I deserved better." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of Caleb's confession hanging between us. Finally, I asked the question that had been burning in my mind since I found out. "Do you want to be a part of Austin's life now?" Caleb looked up, surprise flickering across his face. Yes, I do. Meeting him, seeing his picture, it made everything real in a way it hadn't been before. I want to know him, to be there for him, but I don't know how. I don't know if Melissa will even let me after everything." I nodded, processing this information. "And what about us, Caleb? Where do you see our marriage going from here?" Caleb reached for my hand, and this time I didn't pull away. "I love you, Avery, more than anything. I know I've broken your trust, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to earn it back, if you let me. But I understand if this is too much, if you can't forgive me." I looked at our joined hands, feeling the familiar warmth of Caleb's touch. Part of me wanted to pull him close, to go back to the life we had before, but I knew that wasn't possible. Too much had changed. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Caleb," I said softly. "Not yet, anyway. You've lied to me for our entire relationship. You made choices that affected my life without giving me a say. And you abandoned your child. That's a lot to come back from." Caleb nodded, his eyes filling with tears. "I understand. What do you want me to do?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to say. "I think we need some time apart, real time, not just a few days. I need to figure out who I am without you, and you need to figure out how to be a father to Austin." Are you asking for a divorce?" Caleb asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not yet," I replied, "but I'm not ruling it out either. I think we should separate for a while, get some counseling, both together and separately. You need to build a relationship with your son, and I need to decide if I can trust you again." Caleb nodded slowly, pain etched across his face. Okay, if that's what you need, that's what we'll do. I'll find a place to stay. We sat there for a while longer, talking about the logistics of our separation. It was surreal discussing the dismantling of our life together in such practical terms. But underneath the pain, I felt a glimmer of something else, hope maybe, or at least the possibility of it. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. Caleb moved out, finding an apartment across town. We started seeing a marriage counselor both together and separately. I threw myself into my work, grateful for the distraction it provided. Meanwhile, Caleb began the process of becoming a part of Austin's life. It wasn't easy. Melissa was understandably wary, and Austin was confused and hesitant, but slowly they started to build a relationship. I kept my distance from that part of Caleb's life, not ready to meet Austin or become involved in that situation. But I couldn't help but notice the changes in Caleb as he embraced fatherhood. He seemed more grounded, more responsible. In our counseling sessions, he spoke about the joy of getting to know his son, but also the deep regret for the years he'd missed. As the months went by, I found myself settling into my new life. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and started to rediscover who I was outside of my marriage. It was challenging, but also liberating in a way I hadn't expected. One day, about 6 months into our separation, I met Caleb for coffee. It had become a semi-regular thing, checking in with each other outside of our counseling sessions. How are things going on with Austin? I asked, stirring my latte. Caleb lit up, as it always did when he talked about his son. Really good, actually. We went to the zoo last weekend. He's so smart, Avery, and funny. He has this way of looking at the world that just amazes me. I smiled, genuinely happy for Caleb despite the complicated emotions it stirred up. That's great, Caleb. I'm glad you're building a relationship with him. Caleb nodded, his expression turning serious. It made me realize how much I missed, though, how much time I can never get back. I'll always regret that. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Caleb's words hanging between us. Finally, I took a deep breath and said what I've been thinking for weeks. Caleb, I think it's time we talk about making this separation permanent. His head snapped up, eyes wide. What? But I thought things were getting better between us. The counseling, the talks we've been having. I reached across the table, taking his hand. They have gotten better. We're communicating more honestly than we ever have, and I'm proud of the changes you've made, the way you've stepped up for Austin, but you can't forgive me? Caleb finished, his voice hollow. I squeezed his hand. It's not just about forgiveness. These past months, I've done a lot of thinking about who I am, what I want from life, and I've realized that I don't want to be married to someone I can't trust completely. The doubt, the suspicion, I don't want to live like that. His eyes filled with tears. I've changed, Avery. I swear I have. I'll never lie to you again. I believe you mean that, I said gently, but the trust is broken, Caleb, and I'm not sure it can be repaired, not in a way that would allow us to have a healthy marriage. Caleb pulled his hand away, running it through his hair in frustration. So that's it? You're just giving up on us? I shook my head. I'm not giving up. I'm acknowledging reality. We're different people now that we were when we got married. You're a father with responsibilities to Austin. I'm someone who needs to be able to trust her partner implicitly. I don't think we fit together anymore. We talked for hours, going over every aspect of our relationship. There were tears, accusations, and moments of tender remembrance. But by the end, we both knew it was over. The divorce process was surprisingly amicable. We'd already been living apart, and neither of us wanted a drawn-out legal battle. We divided our assets fairly, sold our house, and went our separate ways. It wasn't easy. There were days when I questioned my decision, nights when I reached for Caleb in an empty bed. But as time passed, I became more certain that I'd made the right choice. As I drifted away from the time of our marriage, however, I felt lighter. The anger and hurt that had consumed me for so long had faded, replaced by a quiet acceptance. Caleb and I had a chapter together, but now we were writing our own stories. I headed home to the apartment I'd made my own, filled with my plans for my future. A future that was uncertain and sometimes scary, but undeniably mine. This wasn't the life I planned, but maybe it was the life I was meant to have all along. Here are my thoughts about the story. First off, can we talk about Avery? Man, what a journey she went through. At the start, I was like, yeah, girl, dump his lying ass. But as the story went on, I found myself really respecting how she handled everything. She didn't just react on emotion, she took the time to really think about what she wanted and needed. That's some serious emotional maturity right there. Something that Caleb clearly lacked apparently, considering the speed at which he told Melissa to keep quiet about his own child. And on the topic of Caleb, okay, I'll admit I wanted to reach through my screen and slap him at first. Lying about a old-ass kid, that's a big yikes for me. But you know what? The way he stepped up and took responsibility for Austin, that was pretty admirable. The eventually taking responsibility part, the fact that his hand practically had to be forced into doing so is horrific. And I'm not forgetting that anytime soon. What really got me, though, was how the story showed that sometimes love isn't enough. You can care about someone deeply, you can want things to work, but if trust is broken, man, that's hard to come back from. And in this case, and for many others, it never does return. Can't believe I have to say this, but don't break trust in a relationship, guys, especially not about an entire child. What the heck? Now, I know some of you in the comments are going to be like, but they should have tried harder, or once a cheater, always a cheater. And look, I get it. We all bring our own experiences to these stories. I have my opinion and you have yours. And if one of us believes that Melissa should sue for child support and is eagerly waiting for a certain audience's opinion on that belief, then well, up to you.
And now, guys, we will move on to the second story of the video. Please like the video if you have enjoyed it so far. The story starts like this.
Caught my husband texting his ex late at night. Trust had always been the foundation of my relationship with my husband, or so I believed, but that trust was shattered the night I caught Brandon texting his ex at 2 a.m. It started innocently enough. Brandon had been working late a lot, claiming a big project was keeping him at the office. I didn't think much of it at first. After 5 years of marriage, I was used to his unpredictable schedule as a software engineer. But then I started noticing little changes. He was more distracted during our conversations, always seeming to have one eye on his phone. When I'd ask about his day, his answers became vague and evasive. The warmth and intimacy we once shared felt like it was slowly slipping away. Still, I tried to push my doubts aside. Brandon had never given me a reason not to trust him before. Maybe I was just being paranoid, reading too much into things. Then came that fateful night. I had woken up around 2 a.m., reaching for Brandon only to find his side of the bed empty and cold. Groggy and confused, I got up to look for him. As I padded down the hallway, I noticed a faint glow coming from beneath the closed door of his home office. My heart sank. Was he really working this late? I hesitated outside the door, unsure if I should disturb him, but something didn't feel right. Taking a deep breath, I slowly turned the handle and pushed the door open. Brandon was hunched over his desk, the blue light of his phone illuminating his face in the darkness. He was so engrossed in whatever was on the screen that he didn't even notice me at first. "Brandon?" I said softly. He startled violently, fumbling with his phone and nearly dropping it. "Jesus, Nina, you scared the hell out of me." "Sorry," I mumbled, taking in his guilty expression. "I woke up and you weren't in bed. Is everything okay?" Yeah, everything's fine," he said quickly, avoiding my eyes. "Just catching up on some work emails." But I had seen the way he tried to hide his phone screen when I walked in. My stomach churned with dread. "At 2 in the morning?" I asked, my voice tight with suspicion. Brandon ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I knew well. You know how crazy things have been at work lately. I couldn't sleep, so I figured I might as well be productive. I wanted so badly to believe him, but the nagging doubt that had been growing for weeks suddenly crystallized into cold certainty. He was lying to me. Before I could second guess myself, I blurted out, "Let me see your phone." His eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed defensively. "What? Why?" "If it's just work emails, you shouldn't have a problem showing me," I challenged, my heart pounding. For a long moment, we just stared at each other in tense silence. Then Brandon's shoulders slumped in defeat. Without a word, he handed me his phone. With trembling fingers, I unlocked the screen, and there it was, a long text conversation with a name I hadn't seen in years. Marie, his ex-girlfriend from college. I scrolled through the messages, my vision blurring with tears. It wasn't explicitly romantic, but the easy familiarity and inside jokes made it clear this wasn't just catching up with an old friend. They had been texting regularly for months. "Nina, I can explain," Brandon began, his voice pleading. But I was already storming out of the room, his phone clutched in my white-knuckled grip. I needed space to think, to breathe, to process the betrayal coursing through my veins. Brandon followed me into the living room. "It's not what you think," he insisted. "Marie and I are just friends. We reconnected a few months ago and—" "Friends?" I whirled to face him, my voice cracking. "Friends don't text each other in the middle of the night behind their spouse's back." Brandon winced. "Okay, I know how it looks, but I swear nothing has happened between us. We've just been talking." "For months?" I cried. "Why didn't you tell me you were in contact with her?" He hesitated, guilt written all over his face. I didn't want you to worry or get the wrong idea." I really wouldn't believe my ears. Brandon only continued to spout excuses, only about half of which I heard. I just couldn't focus on anything at the moment, and I told him that I'd be staying with my sister for the next few days to think on it. He begged me not to go, but my mind was made up. I packed a bag in tense silence while Brandon hovered anxiously, continuing to plead his case. I tuned him out, focused on just getting through the next few minutes without completely falling apart. As I headed for the door, Brandon made one last desperate attempt. "I love you," he said, his voice breaking. "More than anything. Please remember that." I paused, my hand on the doorknob. Without turning back, I whispered, "I thought I knew that. Now I'm not so sure." Then I walked out into the cold pre-dawn air, leaving behind the shattered remains of the life I thought we had. The next few days passed in a blur of tears and sleepless nights on my sister Amy's couch. She was furious when I told her what happened, ready to drive over and give Brandon a piece of her mind. But I asked her not to. I needed time and space to sort through my own feelings before dealing with anyone else's. Brandon called and texted constantly at first. I ignored most of it, only responding with brief messages to let him know I was safe and still needed time. After a couple of days, the barrage of communication slowed to a trickle. Part of me was relieved. Another part ached at the thought that he might be giving up so easily. On my fourth day at Amy's, I finally felt calm enough to really examine the situation. The initial shock and hurt had faded somewhat, leaving room for more rational thought. I loved Brandon despite everything. That hadn't changed. We had built a life together, shared dreams and inside jokes, and quiet moments of perfect contentment. Could I really throw all that over some text messages? But then I remembered the secrecy, the lies, the broken trust. Even if nothing physical had happened with Marie, Brandon had still chosen to hide this from me. He had prioritized his connection with her over his vows to me. How could we move forward from that? I knew I had a decision to make. I could walk away now, file for divorce, and start over. Or I could try to salvage our marriage to rebuild the trust we had lost. After hours of internal debate, I realized I wasn't ready to give up on us just yet. We had been happy once. Maybe we could be again with work and time and brutal honesty. That evening, I called Brandon. "Nina," he answered on the first ring, hope and anxiety warring in his voice. "Hi," I said softly. I think I'm ready to talk." Brandon let out a shaky breath. Thank God, I've been going out of my mind here without you. Can I come pick you up? No, I said firmly. I'll meet you at home in an hour. We need neutral ground for this conversation. When I walked through our front door 16 minutes later, the familiar scent of home brought a wave fresh of emotion. Brandon was waiting in the living room, pacing nervously. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, clothes rumpled like he'd been sleeping in them. We sat on opposite sides of the couch. The conversation that followed was necessary, but difficult. I took a deep breath. I need you to be completely honest with me now, Brandon. No more secrets, no more lies. Do you still have feelings for Marie? Brandon flinched, avoiding my eyes. For a long moment he was silent. Then, so quietly I almost missed it, he whispered, Yes. The admission hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Even though I had suspected it, hearing him say it out loud was devastating. But Nina, you have to believe me, Brandon continued hurriedly. Nothing happened between us. We never met up or anything like that. It was just talking. Just talking, I repeated bitterly, for months behind my back while you were married to me. Brandon hung his head. I know how wrong it was. I got caught up in the nostalgia, the memories of how things used to be. But it wasn't real. What we have, what you and I have, that's real. I wiped away the tears that had started to fall. How can I believe that? How can I ever trust you again? I'll do whatever it takes, Brandon said fervently. I'll go to therapy, couples counseling, anything. I'll cut off all contact with Marie. I'll be an open book. You can have full access to my phone, my email, everything. Just please give me a chance to make this right. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to forgive and forget, to go back to the way things were, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. I don't know if I can, I said honestly, but I'm willing to try for now. Brandon's face lit up with hope. Really? Oh, Nina, thank you. I promise I'll do everything I can to earn back your trust. I held up a head to temper his enthusiasm. This doesn't mean everything is okay. We have a lot of work to do if we're going to get past this, and I can't guarantee it will work. Brandon nodded solemnly. I understand. Whatever you need, I'm here. I love you, Nina. Only you. The words that had once filled me with warmth now left me cold. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt had taken root. It would take more than words to fix what had been broken. Over the next few weeks, Brandon was true to his word. He deleted Marie's number, blocked her on all social media, and gave me full access to his phone and accounts. He even suggested we tried couples therapy, which surprised me. Brandon had always been skeptical of therapy in the past. Our first session with the therapist was awkward and tense. Brandon and I sat stiffly on opposite ends of a plush couch, neither of us quite sure how to begin. The doctor, a petite woman with kind eyes and an air of calm authority, smiled encouragingly at us. It was odd, trying to put into words just what had gone wrong between us. There were revelations shared that hurt the both of us, and distantly I think I knew it was the beginning of the end. Over the next hour, she guided us through a series of exercises designed to improve our communication and rebuild trust. It was emotionally exhausting, but as we left her office, at least at first, I felt a tiny spark of hope for the first time since that awful night. We continued with weekly therapy sessions, slowly chipping away at the walls that had grown between us. At home, we made a conscious effort to be more open and honest with each other, even when it was uncomfortable. But despite our best efforts, I still found myself struggling to fully trust Brandon again. Every time his phone buzzed, my stomach clenched with anxiety. When he worked late, I couldn't help wondering if he was really at the office. I hated feeling this way. I hated the person I was becoming. Suspicious, insecure, always on edge. This wasn't me, and it clearly wasn't the kind of marriage I wanted. About 2 months into our counseling, I finally worked up the courage to voice the fear that had been gnawing at me. Brandon, I said one night as we were getting ready for bed, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. He looked at me warily. Of course, what is it? I took a deep breath. If Marie called you right now and said she wanted to be with you, would you go? His eyes widened in shock. What? No, absolutely not. Nina, how can you even think that? Because you admitted you still had feelings for her, I said, my voice breaking. And I can't help wondering if I'm just second best, the consolation prize. Brandon's face crumpled. In 2 quick strides, he crossed the room and took my hands in his. Nina, no. God, no. You are everything to me. You're not second best. You're the only one I want to be with. I wanted to believe him, but the doubt still lingered. Then why? I whispered. Why did you turn to her instead of me? Brandon was quiet for a long moment, his thumbs tracing circles on the backs of my hands. Finally, he said, I think I was scared. Scared of what? He sighed heavily. Of failing, of not living up to your expectations or my own. Marie, she knew me before when I was younger, less settled. It was easier to pretend I was still that person with her. I pulled my hands away, wrapping my arms around myself. So you'd rather pretend to be someone else than be honest with me? No. Brandon ran a hand through his hair in frustration. That's not... I'm explaining this all wrong. Nina, please believe me. I don't want Marie. I don't want that old version of myself. I want you and the life we built together. I wanted to believe him, but the walls I'd built to protect myself weren't ready to come down yet. I think I need some air, I nodded, grabbing my jacket and heading for the door. Brandon called after me, but I kept walking, needing space to clear my head. As I wandered our quiet neighborhood, I realized that despite months of therapy and effort, the core of our problem remained unresolved. The trust that had been broken that night hadn't fully mended, and without trust, what did we really have? When I returned home an hour later, Brandon was waiting anxiously in the living room. I'm sorry, he said immediately. I know I keep screwing this up, but please, don't give up on us. I sank into the couch, suddenly exhausted. I'm trying, Brandon, but I don't know how much longer I can do this. He sat beside me, careful to maintain some distance. What can I do? Tell me what you need. I shook my head. That's just it. I don't know anymore. I don't know if there's anything you can do to fix this. The silence that followed was heavy with unspoken words and fading hopes. Over the next few weeks, we continued going through the motions, attending therapy, having careful conversations, trying to rebuild what we had lost. But it felt like we were just treading water, neither moving forward nor letting go. It all came to a head one night after a particularly intense therapy session. She had pushed us to confront some hard truths about our relationship, and the drive home was thick with tension. As we entered our house, Brandon turned to me with pleading eyes. Nina, please talk to me. What are you thinking? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the words I knew I had to say. I'm thinking that maybe we're fighting for something that doesn't exist anymore. Brandon's face fell. What do you mean? I said, my voice trembling, that maybe love isn't enough. Maybe trust, once broken, can't always be repaired. No, Brandon said, shaking his head vehemently. No, I refuse to believe that. We can fix this, Nina. We just need more time. But as I looked at him, this man I had loved for so long, who I had imagined spending my life with, I felt a sad certainty settle over me. I don't think this is the answer, Brandon. We've been trying for months and I still flinch every time your phone buzzes. I still wonder where you really are when you work late. That's not the kind of marriage I want. Tears were streaming down Brandon's face now. Please, he began, I'll do anything. We can try a different therapist. We can take a vacation. Anything you want. I shook my head, my own tears falling freely. It's not about what I want anymore. It's about what I need, and I need to be able to trust my partner completely. I need to feel secure in my relationship. And as much as it kills me to admit it, I don't think I can have that with you anymore. Brandon collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. So that's it? You're just giving up? It's not giving up, I said softly. It's recognizing that sometimes love isn't enough to overcome broken trust. and it's choosing to prioritize my own well-being and happiness. We talked for hours that night, crying and reminiscing and mourning the future we had once dreamed of together. In the end, we both knew that our marriage had run its course. The next few months were a blur of lawyers, paperwork, and dividing up the life we had built together. It was painful and messy, but underneath the sadness, I felt a growing sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, I could breathe freely without the weight of suspicion and doubt pressing down on me. Our divorce was finalized on a crisp fall day, almost exactly a year after I had first discovered those fateful text messages. As I left the courthouse clutching the papers that officially ended our marriage, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Grief for what we had lost, fear of an uncertain future, but also a tentative hope for what might come next. I decided to take some time for myself to rediscover who I was outside of my relationship with Brandon. I threw myself into my work, rekindled old friendships that had fallen by the wayside, and even started taking a pottery class I had always been curious about. Slowly but surely, I started to feel like myself again, stronger, more confident, and with a clearer understanding of what I needed in a relationship. About 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Brandon at a mutual friend's birthday party. It was awkward at first, but as we talked, I realized that the anger and hurt had faded. In its place was a bittersweet acceptance. "How are you doing?" I asked him sincerely. Brandon gave me a small, sad smile. "I'm okay, getting there. You?" "The same," I nodded. "It's been hard, but I think it was the right decision." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry, Nina, for everything. You deserve better." "We both did," I said softly. "I hope you find happiness, Brandon. I really do." As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure wash over me. The chapter of my life with Brandon was truly over. But a new one was just beginning, and this time I was determined to write it on my own terms. In the years that followed, I focused on building a life that fulfilled me. I advanced in my career, nurtured deep friendships, and eventually, when I was ready, started dating again. But this time, I approached relationships with a newfound wisdom and self-assurance. I never forgot the lessons learned from my marriage to Brandon. Trust and honest communication became non-negotiable requirements in any relationship I entered. And while the pain of our divorce had been intense, I was grateful for the growth and self-discovery it ultimately led to. Looking back, I realized that sometimes the hardest decisions are the ones that set us free. Ending my marriage had been painful, but it opened the door to a future filled with possibilities. A future where I could trust not just a partner, but myself. Here are my thoughts about the story. I feel for Nina so much. It honestly felt like she got run over by a train and then the same train reversed on the track to get her twice. Having your trust broken like that and then having to see that reminder every day, that isn't easy. After all, it's like having a constant source of salt to rub into the fresh wound. It's better to completely remove the source from your life and give yourself time to heal before trying anything else. And Brandon, I wanted to reach through the screen and shake some sense into him. It's like, dude, you messed up. Own it, fix it, preferably on your own and not pressuring the victim of the consequences of your actions. But at the same time, I get it. When you're scared of losing someone, sometimes you just keep digging that hole deeper and deeper. What really got me, though, was that slow, painful process of trying to rebuild trust. It's not just a switch you can flip, right? Nina tried so hard to move past it, going to therapy, wanting to believe Brandon, but still flinching every time his phone buzzes. That's the real stuff right there. It's those little moments that can wear you down over time. Honestly, though, what I'm most curious about is what exactly Marie, Brandon's ex, was thinking. I mean, if they recently reconnected, then she had to have known about his marital status, right? But still, she went after him anyway. And that's something you have to remember too. There's always at least 3 people involved in a case of infidelity. The one that's been cheated on, the cheater, and the affair partner. Of course, if the affair partner didn't know about the relationship, that makes things a little different. But the sentiment still stands. It wasn't just Brandon that chose to do this. I wish the best for Nina. Honestly, she deserves a breather after it all.
Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.